What's up, my friends? It's Jason Morris. I'm back. 2018. It's such a good year this year already. Some big plans. Today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a bit of my workload, what I'm going to do in Lightroom, and also what I'm going to do in Photoshop to give the little bit tweaks and add a few extra little bits that's going to give my photos some more volume to go from something like this over to this. And you can see the difference from here to here. All those little bits help in the end to make your landscape photography the best. What I'm also going to do is I am going to share my settings. So I'm going to show you exactly how I'm going to get these photos from start for like this to finish. Coming right up. All right, so we're going to chuck this first into Lightroom. Gonna get the photo right here. Better start recording. So the settings that I had on my tripod. So obviously the first thing you want to do is make sure you have a tripod. Secondly, you've got some filters in case it is a little bit too light, because you're going to do long exposures. I had here, you can see 6-second exposure. I was at f14. And I was at 24 millimeters at 100 ISO. So this is the picture that I got right there. So let's jump into Lightroom. So you can see here, this is where the outside of my filter was. So unfortunately, the filter is a little bit too small for the camera lens. So I'm gonna crop it a little bit. I'm not a fan of cropping because you do wanna try and keep the image at the particular size, so you're not actually cropping into the photo. You want to get the full resolution of the image. I'm going to crop some of these trees out because it's not really necessary. Sometimes, you just can't get the image perfectly correct, so you've got to actually crop it in and get your right dimensions. Now, one of the biggest things that we've got to do is we've got to enable the profile corrections right here, because you can see the difference here. It actually shows you what lens you use. So I used the 24-70 by Tamron, and it makes the appropriate adjustments for that. All right, secondly, what we're gonna try and do is get rid of all these trees down the bottom here. Might even have to try and bring it up a little bit. Seems about right. I do want to square it up. It's kind of a little bit off in terms of the horizon. Try and bring it nice and square to the buildings and also to the bridge. Okay, so next, what I'm going to do first is decrease the highlights and increase the shadows. So it's going to bring everything out to play, pop up the contrast and bring down the blacks. Now what you want to do with the whites, so you want to hold Option or Alt and click, and you want to bring it up before you start seeing this. So just before, right there, brings up the whites nice and correct. Secondly, I'm going to bring up the vibrance and then pop up the contrast. Now you can see it's really popping out the image now. You want to go down to the tone curve, and what I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to bring down some of the darks, bring up the shadows and the highlights. Bring up the highlights as well. It's starting to look really good there. It does need to be a little bit darker, so I'm going to bring down the blacks right there. But also, we'll use this gradient tool right here. So I'm going to bring some gradient into that, bring down the exposure probably down by half a stop. I might even go further. I might go a whole stop. Bring it down. That's looking pretty good. Bring a little blue into it because I'm going to bring some orange into this in the highlights. So that looks pretty good first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the highlights here. Click on that, bring out a little bit of an orange tone at the top. I like that. That looks beautiful. And then quickly adjust it down here. 50%, I'm liking the 50%. That's pretty good. Now, what I mentioned here, we're going to try and get these out. So, I might just zoom out a little bit. This is the healing brush tool. Let's see if I can heal that out. See if it makes a bit of a difference there. Because the water is really silky from the long exposure, it's bringing out some nice even tones where I can do this. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult, like this tree is going to be extremely difficult to do. But I'm up for the challenge. If not, I can adjust it in Photoshop is what I'm going to do next. But we'll keep digging away at this. Woo! It's very hot. I'm actually sweating. It's approximately 33 degrees at 7 p.m. in Brisbane, Australia. It is damn hot. So yeah, I'm sweating, I'm puffing. It's not fun. It's not fun at all. But anyway, back to this. So clone, we might actually have to use the clone tool. And then we'll bring down the opacity. Let's have a look at that. Okay. It's not looking too great. So we're going to have to heal that around the edges. It's much easier to take away in Photoshop. See, the shadowing in the water can work. See, that works. That works very well. We can just bring out some of the shadowing. So you can use this dodge and burn tool. So you can see there's a bit of shadowing from the bridge. Get that bridge shape like this, bring it down, decrease that exposure. And boom, you just created a consistent shadow there. It needs to be a touch wider. And you can actually duplicate that. Bring a couple more over because you can see there's a few more shadows just to make sure we're keeping it all consistent through where we've just touched up. So that's making it look a little bit better there. These trees, yeah, I could probably leave those trees alone. It's actually, they're not too bad. No, I don't like them. Let's take them away. On second thoughts, you know, you've got to, it's all these little things. It's the little things is what counts. You know, you've got to make these minor adjustments and it's just got to make your image pop so much better. Trust me, watch this. So there we go. We got rid of that one. We'll, same again, get that healing brush, get that out of the way. There's a nice little tree there. So my shooting position, I couldn't get the optimal position because there was a fencing obviously guarding the edge of the cliff. So that was pretty important there. Okay. Okay, so keep going on. That's looking pretty good there with some of those. See, you can see there's one little bit right here. I've actually adjusted that. We can go over it again just to make sure. Boom, there we go. Disappears. That's what's up. Okay. Shall we try for this big tree? Why not? Let's try for this big tree. See what we can do. Obviously, we don't want the bridge to be cloned right there. That would just look silly. Coming over to this side, you can see here, that's looking pretty good to me. Obviously, the bottom part needs a little bit of adjusting. We'll just smash that over there. You know, sometimes I don't actually know why it chooses these positions. because clearly you can see that that's not optimal. Okay, there we go. And that's just zooming in, so you can barely see anything at this zoom anyway, but that just gives you the small minor detail and touches. You can see here, we're gonna have to do this as well, because that's gonna annoy me if I don't get rid of it. I have to get rid of it. I've just got to make sure things are perfect sometimes. So let's have a look there. I might actually move it up a little bit because it's messing up with the edges there. Yeah, I'm liking that. Maybe one more for good measure. And yep, that's looking pretty good there. When we zoom out, you can barely see a difference, but what we're actually going to do here is we're going to bring up a gradient tool anyway, and then bring down the exposure. That's going to cover up some of the things, but it's also going to draw the focus into the center of the image, is when you get this gradient coming up here. A little bit darker. So the two gradients, I'm going to bring that a little bit darker too. The two gradients is going to make it focus on the bridge and also focus on the skyline here. Now, is there much detail in the trees? We could probably bring out a little bit more detail in the trees. So dodge and burn through here. I'll bring that a little bit wider. Actually, I'll tell you what, we'll bring it in smaller, increase that exposure a little bit, and then we're going to duplicate it because we're going to move that over like this. How does that look? So that brings out the trees just a little bit more. That looks, gives more focus on the bridge there. We've lost a little bit of detail in these trees, but yeah, I'm going to have to fix that up. So let's go that, increase the exposure, might even increase the shadows on these trees by a little, not too much, because you can ruin it a bit. Duplicate it, bring it over next door, right there. Okay. I think we've done a little bit too much there. A little bit too much. Bring it back. See, that's the thing. You've got to do little bits and tweaks because you're never going to get it perfect first up. You're just going to have to tweak a little bit, see if it looks right. Okay, so now we go down. We're actually going to go down to a little bit of detail and reduce some of the noise, because you can see a little bit of noise through the bridge, but you don't want to bring that up too far because that can smooth the image out, and yeah, this doesn't look pretty because it's too smooth. So I'm only going to do it roughly halfway. That's starting to look really good. I really want to make those blues pop. So you can actually come up to the blue here and just bring up the saturation a smidge. That's just going to bring out the blues in the bridge. Little bits in here, but we'll keep, try and make the shadows nice and orange as well. So 0, let's look at here. 11 looks good, just enough oranges and blues because it is sunset. Actually, I'm going to go down a little bit, 5%, because it is sunset. There is going to be oranges and yellow tones in this image. I'm actually going to bring another gradient in at this angle, right in the corner. I'm going to darken that corner down because that's going to mimic that this part is dark and over to the left side of the image is light. You can just see a little bit on the edge there. I might bring it in a touch right there. That's better. Now it looks like there's a little bit of dust on the filter. You have to make sure you clean these ones up because the ND filters, they really catch dust, and it's yeah, it's noticeable in the images sometimes, and I don't like it. But anyway, we're looking good. We're looking very good. Okay, so I'm happy. I'm happy with the image that's currently there at the moment. Yeah, let's chuck it in the Photoshop. So that's the image there. We'll chuck it in the Photoshop. Fortunately, I don't have Photoshop on my laptop, but I've got it on my desktop Mac. So let's get into that right now.